Why is so many people in there? Oh, sure. Everyone's just going on. It's okay. Okay.
We're all set. So you make a bracha every morning. Baruch atah Hashem Elokeinu melech haolam, hamechem mitzadei gover, that Hashem prepares our steps. Every step we take is directed by Hashem. So I took a step yesterday. It was a specific time in the morning. Not everybody was outside then, but as soon as I took a step outside, it was 7 o'clock in the morning. There was a sheet of ice, and immediately I found myself in a sitting position on the floor. So, I wasn't sure when it happened, but anyway, so I hurt my back. Baruch Hashem, it looks like it's nothing major, just a bruise. Hopefully it's just pain, and you'll be back. I'll be back, might even be back in school tomorrow. But I guess when you say Hashem directs the steps of every person, it's also when you fall, you need a special bracha to fall in such a way that chas v'shalom, nothing worse happens. And Baruch Hashem, it looks like that is what took place. So I thank the Eibishter for that. Now, I just want to say we're going to be learning now the Maimer from the Rebbe said in 5/7/11, 1951. So just as an introduction, that basically as preparation for Yud Shvat, there are 3 Maimarim that everybody is learning during this time. One of them is the original Maimer that the previous Rebbe wrote for Yud Shvat. In those days, because of the Frierdiker Rebbe's health, he wasn't saying the Maimarim, he was writing them. It was printed and published, and then it was distributed to learn on a specific day. So that year, 1951, Shabbos, Parshas Bo, was Yud Shvat. And Yud Shvat is the yahrzeit, the day of passing of the Frierdiker Rebbe's grandmother. Her name was Rebbetzin Rivka. She was the Rebbetzin and wife of the Rebbe Marash. A few days later, on the 13th of Shvat, was the yahrzeit of Rebbetzin Stern Sarah, which is the Frierdiker Rebbe's mother, the Rebbetzin and wife of the Rebbe Rashab. So in honor of the 2 Rebbetzins, the Frierdiker Rebbe gave out a pamphlet, and the pamphlet had in it 2 Maimarim. One that the Chassidim should study on Yud Shvat, and one the Chassidim should study on the 13th of Shvat, Yud Gimel. So the one that was for Yud Shvat is and begins with the words Basi Legani, and the one for Yud Gimel Shvat begins with the word Hayushavez Baganim. Both are psukim from Shir HaShirim. So the Rebbe explains that the Frierdiker Rebbe knew that this is going to be his own yahrzeit. This was going to be the day of passing. So when he wrote the Maimer, he not only wrote it in honor of the Rebbetzins, but he also had in mind the fact that this is the day of his passing and the day that is going to bring us into a new era.
Rabbi Majeski.
So that's why, what? Is that a question?
Sorry, no, sorry.
Okay, no problem. So the Maimer that everyone learns is Basi Legani Tavshin Yud. That's the one that the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote originally. And in our school, we have a curriculum, and there's a cycle of 2 years. Every 2 years, we learn that Maimer in depth. This year, it's not in the schedule. It was last year. It'll be next year, Mirz Hashem. But what we do is learn other Maimarim that are related to Yud Shvat. So there are 2 other things that are related. One is what you've been learning until now, the Maimer that the Rebbe said in 1962, 5/7/22. And that's because I'm sure the teacher explained that every year the Rebbe would take one of the one chapter of the Maimer and elaborate on it. So the Rebbe's entire Maimer would be elaborating on one chapter of the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer, and would follow the sequence of the years. So that year, that according to the cycle, the chapter to elaborate on was the 12th chapter of the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer. And this year is the 4th time around, so that's why you were learning that. I didn't continue it because at this point the Maimer becomes very complicated, very deep, and it's not a matter of having the intelligence to understand it. Everyone has that, but there's a lot of necessary knowledge of background in Chassidus to be able to understand what it's going to say in that Maimer. So that's why I decided now to switch to the third thing that Chassidim study, and that is the Maimer the Rebbe said the first time, Basi Legani. So this Maimer is very significant. First of all, because it's the first chapter of the whole Basi Legani, but mainly because this was the Maimer that openly made it clear to us that the Rebbe has accepted the position of leadership to become the successor of the previous Rebbe. On the day of Shvat, we'll learn more about it. We'll talk more about it, what happened, how the Rebbe refused to accept leadership. The Rebbe had Farbrengens, the Rebbe did a lot of different activities, but the one thing which is reserved exclusively for a Rebbe, saying a Maimer, that he didn't do, because the Rebbe didn't officially accept leadership. He wouldn't allow the term Kvod Kedushas Admor be used, and many other things. So the first time the Rebbe did say a Maimer was Basi Legani on the day of Yud Shvat. At night it was Yud Aleph Shvat, and this is that Maimer. So the sheets that you have starts with the second chapter, not the first. Again, for the same reason. The first chapter is a very deep chapter, and it's necessary to have a lot of background in Chassidus to understand it. But I'll just say one thing about it so we'll be able to follow into this chapter. That the Friedrich Rebbe's Maimer is based on the Medrash, where the Medrash says that Iker Shechina B'tachtoinim Hoysa. The Shechina was primarily here in this world. And the point in the first chapter is, it doesn't only mean where was the Shechina primarily, but it means that the primary level of Shechina was in this world. What does that mean? So the Rebbe goes on to explain that the word Shechina means Hashem's presence. But when we learn and we study Chassidus, we know that Hashem's presence could be from so many different levels, from Atzilus, Bria, Yetzira, Asiya. And in fact, that's what the Rebbe explains in the Maimer, that when it says the word Shechina, Hashem's presence, depending on what context it's found, it could mean a different level completely. There are levels and levels. There's Shechina as it is in Atzilus and Bria and Yetzira, then there's higher and higher. When it says that the primary Shechina was down here, it means the highest, deepest level of Shechina was resting and its presence was found here in this physical world. In order to explain that, the Rebbe goes on to explain different levels of Shechina and what is the highest and the deepest level of all those levels. And that's the part that is hard to follow with a lot of, unless you have a lot of background in Chassidus. So we're going to start with the second chapter, which is going to be much easier to follow. So what does it say in the Medrash? That the Shechina primarily, and the primary and the essence of the Shechina, the highest level of Shechina was where B'tachtoinim, in the down here in the lower worlds. We know when it says the lower world, it could mean in the spiritual realm, but the lower level of the spiritual realm. But that's not what it means here. Mevur Medrash. It's understood from the Medrash, the Tachtoinim, that the word, the lower ones, Koi al Olam Hazeh Gashmi. It means the lowest of the lowest, which is this physical, materialistic world that we live in. And we see it from the way it explains the sequence of events. First, there was the chet of Eitz Hadas, that Adam and Chava ate from the fruit of the tree. As a result of that, Nistalka Hashchina me'aretz l'rakia. The Shechina was removed from earth and went to the heavens. But later when the Torah was given, Al Har Sinai, Basi Legani Legnuni, then Hashem came back to his garden, which is again this physical world. So that means that Iker Hasiluk, the most significant part of the Shechina leaving, was accomplished through Chet Eitz Hadas, more than any other, because later it says Chet Eitz Hadas made the Shechina go away from earth to heaven. And then when Cain killed Hevel, it made the Shechina go from one heaven to another heaven. And then the Avera of the generation of the Mabel with the flood, the Shechina went from another heaven to a higher heaven until it went to the seventh heaven. So the Rebbe is saying that even though there were different sins that caused the Shechina to be removed, but the one that's most significant of all was the Chet Eitz Hadas. Why? Not just because it was first. Like chronologically, this was first. No, it's deeper than that. Aidei Chet Eitz Hadas hoy nasinas mokim l'shara chatoim. Because this sin is what made it possible. This enabled all the other sins to follow. Hachet Eitz Hadas, when they ate from the tree, hayasiba v'goyrim lachatoyim dekayim v'enish chulu. That was the cause, and that's what enabled and made it possible for Cain to kill Hevel, for Enish to worship Avodah Zarah, for the generation of the Mabel to do the sins that they did. Because if they wouldn't have eaten from the tree, then there wouldn't have, godliness would be so revealed in the world, there wouldn't be any room, there wouldn't be any possibility for even people to think. It wouldn't even dawn upon them to do something which goes against Hashem. So the Chet Eitz Hadas is sort of what opened the door and enabled all the other sins, and that's why it's the most significant. That's number one. Another reason why it's the most significant is also because of the damage that it did. When we talk about the fact that the Shechina left this world, or the Shechina was ascended, the Shechina went away higher and higher, more and more removed from our physical world. So even though there were 7 steps, how the Shechina was removed, but the step that's the most significant is when it was removed from the physical world. And that was accomplished through Chet Eitz Hadas. Why? Why is that the most significant? So the Rebbe explains it's very simple. The Keshem she'ikar Shechina b'tachtonim hibaylam hazeh dafka. Just like in the positive, when the Shechina was here, what does it say? That where was the Shechina primarily, and where was the Ikar, the essence of the Shechina found here in this physical world? In other words, the physical world is what is most relevant to Hashem and his purpose in creation. So if the most important when the Shechina was there was the fact that the Shechina was in the physical world, so in the negative, the other side of the coin, that the Shechina goes away, what is the most significant? It's Ikra Siluk Mashastalik Ma'aretz Dafka. Once the Shechina left the earth, this physical world, and went to Shemayim, even though every time the Shechina moved away further, it was also a tragic, negative thing. But the worst of all was moving away from earth, because this is the most important place where Hashem wants the Shechina to be. זהו גם כן הטעם שאין מצרף חטא עץ הדס עם החטאים וקיים ואנש. וחש זה בפני עצמי. It's really fascinating to watch how when the Rebbe studies a mimer of the Frierdiker Rebbe, what teaches us a mime of the Frierdiker Rebbe, the Rebbe shows how every word and every detail in what the Frierdiker Rebbe wrote was precise. So here the Rebbe is pointing out one of those details. When the Frierdiker Rebbe talks about the Shekhinah going away, in the Frierdiker Rebbe's Maimer initially, I'll read what it says there. It says that through the Chet Eitz Hadas, the Shekhinah left the earth. And then it says, and through the Chet of Cain, who killed Hevel, and Enosh, who worshipped Avodah Zarah, the Shekhinah left from the first heaven to the second and the third. So how come by Chet Eitz Hadas, he just mentions it separately? And then when he talks about the following generations that did sins, he bunches them together. That the Cain killing Hevel and Enosh, who worshipped Avodah Zarah, caused the Shekhinah to move from the second to the third. He could have put everything together. That through Chet Eitz Hadas and Cain Enosh, the Shekhinah went from the first heaven to the second heaven to the third heaven. So this is the answer. Because the Shekhinah leaving the physical world through Chet Eitz Hadas is of a different category completely. It's the most significant. The Cain Enosh, the other sins, Cain killing Hevel, and Enosh worshipping Avodah Zarah. Nistalka Shechina Merakia Rakia. The Shechina was removed, but in that case, it was removed from one heaven to another heaven. But by the Chet of Eitz Hadas, Nistalka Mi Oretz Rakia. What happened then was it left the earth, it left the physical world. So for two reasons, this is more significant. Number one, this is more relevant to us. In other words, the fact that the Shekhinah is removed from one heaven to another heaven, and it goes further away in the spiritual realm, surely has an effect on us. But what affected us more than anything else is when the Shekhinah was removed from this physical world, when we no longer could see Hashem's presence in an open way, because we are found in this physical world. So first of all, this is the most that's relevant to us. In addition to that, it's also most relevant in terms of the purpose of creation. That was the most significant to Hashem, is that the Shekhinah should be here. So therefore, the most significant in the reverse is when the Shekhinah left this physical world. Okay, so first the Rebbe establishes that when we say the Shekhinah was here, it means here in the physical world. And when the Shekhinah left, even though it left from level to level to level, 7 different levels, 7 different stages, but what was the worst and the most significant of all was when it left the physical world. And when it comes back, what's relevant also, most of all, is when it comes back to the physical world. Mamshech b'maimer, and the Frierdiker Rebbe continues in his maimer, and he says, Achar kach, after this, after the 7 generations that caused the Shekhinah to be removed, Amdu Zayin Tzadikim. There were 7 tzaddikim that rose, and they did the opposite. Haridu es Shekhinah lamata. They brought the Shekhinah back down to this world. Avram Zacha. Avram had the merit. He was the first one. So in his times, the Shekhinah was so far removed, it was in the 7th heaven. Avraham Avinu was the one that brought it down from the 7th heaven to the 6th. Which basically means during Avraham Avinu's lifetime, he did a lot of tremendous things that we don't even know. He lived for 175 years. So all those years, we know all the amazing, incredible things that he did. But then there's those that stand out. How he was tested by being thrown into a fire. He was tested with bringing Yitzhak to the Akedah. He brought tens of thousands of people to believe in Hashem. and many other things, even those that are written in the Chumash. Hashem told Lech lecha mi'artzecha, leave your land and go to a foreign land. There was another test. But nevertheless, all these things, he brought the Shekhinah down, but where did he bring it to? From the seventh heaven to the sixth. His whole lifetime, altogether, everything he did, it was accumulated, and what it accomplished, that the Shekhinah finally left the seventh heaven, came down to the sixth. And then the Frierdiker Rebbe doesn't go into the details, he's very brief, and he goes to Moshe. Ad ki Moshe Shvi. We come to Moshe Rabbeinu, who's the seventh. B'chol Ashvin Chabib, and the seventh are the most precious. Haridu Lamata Ba'aretz. He brought the Shekhinah down to this world. So this is based on the famous words in the Medrash, Kol Hashvin Chabibim. The seventh are the most precious. And the Medrash gives a few examples. One is how in the months of the year, the most precious month is the seventh. Every month has something unique. But the month of Tishrei, that's where you have so many Yom Tovim. It's filled with holy days, Rosh Hashanah, Yom Kippur. In between is Aser Simei Tshuva. Then the Sukkot, Simchas Beis HaSheva. And then there's Shmini Atzeres and Simchas Torah. So this month is the seventh, even though it's the beginning of the year, but we know that we just did this in Chitas yesterday, that when we count the months, the first month of the year is Nisan. And based on that, Tishrei is the seventh month. So we see that the seventh month is most precious. The same with the years, that the seventh year is the most precious. That's why the seventh year is a sabbatical year. You're supposed to rest, not work in the field. That's the time to dedicate yourself more for Torah studies. So the whole year has a certain holiness to it. And that's because it's the seventh year. And then, of course, the seventh day of the week is Shabbos. So it doesn't only apply to days, it also applies to other areas. And one of them is to tzaddikim, that the seventh generation is the most precious. And Moshe Rabbeinu was the seventh. When we say the seventh, we mean he was the seventh generation of Avram Avinu. And Moshe was the one that he brought the Shekhinah down here on earth. So Geshem should be Siluk, just like we explained before regarding the negative, the Shekhinah being removed from the world, going from down up. The most significant of all was the Chet Eitz Hadas. Shenistalik Ma'aretz Canal, that the Shekhinah left earth and went up to the heavens. Nikameh can be an Amshacha, so the same applies in the reverse, in the positive, which is the other side of the coin of the negative. When the Shekhinah is going down, from up, coming down to our world. Ikar Amshacha, Hulamata Baretz Davka. Yes, the Shekhinah goes from the seventh to the sixth, from the sixth heaven to the fifth, from the fifth heaven to the fourth. But what's the most significant is when it comes finally down to the physical earth. And the reason is not only because I'm Shach Lamata Bikar Negei Alanu, because that's the most relevant to us, because when the Shekhinah comes down here, we'll see the Shekhinah. We'll see godliness in a revealed way. This is also the main purpose of the whole idea of the Shekhinah coming down, that it should be in this physical world. But the reason for this is, it says in the Maimon, it puts it into parentheses, because the seventh are the most precious. And we'll soon see that here the Frierdiker was alluding to that the Yud Shvat, the day of his passing, is the day that will lead us into the seventh generation. The Alter Rebbe was the first generation, and the Mitzvah Rebbe was the second generation, Tzemach Tzedek, Rabbi Marash, Rabbi Rashab. The Frierdiker Rebbe is the sixth generation, and with his passing, we entered the seventh generation. It's interesting that this subject of the seventh, so precious, is not a subject that's so common to be discussed in Maimarim. But we see here in this Maimar Basi Legani, the Frierdiker Rebbe chose to put that in, clearly alluding to the fact that we're entering a new era. Lashon Razal, from the words of our sages, the way everything is precise, like we said before. So the quote in Gemara is, or Medrash, Kol Ashvin Chavivim. All the seventh are the most precious. But it doesn't say Kol Achavivin Shvin, that all the precious become the seventh. So which way does it work? That the person or the whatever it is precious because it's the seventh, or because it's precious, Hashem makes it to become the seventh. If it would say that those things that are precious are the seventh, that's what it would mean. But being that it says all those that are the seventh are precious means the mere fact that this month or year or day or this person is the seventh, that alone is the reason why this person is precious. What does that mean? By the way, if you have a question, you could ask the question even on Zoom. Just have to be a little bit louder, and then I'll hopefully be able to answer your question. What does it mean that somebody's the most precious because they're the seventh? What do you mean? Just because they're the seventh? So what does that mean? Well, why should it? How do they turn into a tzaddik just because they're the seventh? So the Rebbe explains the following: the difference between saying that everyone that's precious becomes the seventh, or whoever's the seventh becomes precious, is very simple. When you say that whoever's the most precious becomes the seventh, that means that there's something special about being number seven, and Hashem chooses the person that did serve him in a very exceptional way, and based on that, Hashem appoints him to become the seventh. That would mean that becoming the seventh is a result of the person's avodah. And Hashem sort of made a calculation. Because you did A, B, C, D, whatever, therefore you deserve to become the seventh. There's a higher way, and that is when you say that somebody's precious because they're the seventh, that almost means like random. It's like when you're choosing. You want to choose and you say, okay, whoever's number seven is it. Then you start counting. Whoever turns into seven is it. Has the privilege to do this or that. Or let's say in the Beis Hamikdash, if you remember how they chose which Kohen did what, they chose a number and they started counting. And whoever came out to be that first number, he was the one chosen to do a certain avodah. Whoever chose another, and then the next number was the person who did the next thing, which means there wasn't a logical calculation that because you're this age, or you're so exceptional in these character traits, or you're so exceptional in your Torah study, therefore you are the person that's suitable to do this and this in the Beis Hamikdash. No, you were chosen because you ended up being number 300, and you're 301, so you do that. You're 302, then you do that, which means there wasn't a logical calculation. So the Rebbe is saying that this is the difference between the two things. There's the time where Hashem chooses a certain tzaddik, and the choice comes from a place which is calculated, and it's based on what the person did, and therefore they deserve certain reward from Hashem. When it says that the seventh are the most precious, means that the Hashem's choice is coming from a place that's beyond logic and beyond calculation. It's as if it's something random. That's what we say, just being the seventh. Okay, you're number seven, so you get it. It's like you walk. This is a true story. I have a nephew that lives in Kingston, New York. He walked into a store and they told him, congratulations, you just won $100,000. He was like, of course, shocked. Well, they had a thing that whoever's going to be the millionth person to walk in gets $100,000. And he happened to be the millionth person to walk in. Of course, we believe in Hashem. Nothing is just random. But nevertheless, the reason why he got that money was not because he did something spectacular or because he bought so much merchandise in the store, they decided to reward him. He just turned out to be number 1 million. So there were people before him that they were a few numbers away, but nevertheless, he got it because he just walked in, means it's random. He just happened to be number 1 million, so he happens to get this. It's only a mashal. With Hashem, there's nothing that's random, chas v'shalom. But it means that Hashem chose Moshe Rabbeinu not just because of his avodah, but because something that comes higher than all calculations, comes from a deeper place in Hashem, where Hashem chose from his essence the seventh. Let's see the words inside. From the words of our sages, because it says all the seventh are precious, and it doesn't say all the precious are seventh. From this, it's understood that the Iker HaMaila, the main Maila is Shu Shvi. That's why Hashem chose him. The fact that he's so precious to Hashem is not because of something that he did and he chose to do, but it's because he's the seventh, and that becomes Sadatul. He was born in this time of history, and he turned out to be the seventh. And that's why the seventh are the most precious. And the seventh have a special quality that no one else has, and that's why Zacha Moshe Shenitna Teir Al Yodeh. America. When the Freedom Rebbe first came to America, he said a mimer, where in that mimer he also explained this idea of Kol HaShvim Chavivim. Chassidim also see in this how it's alluding to Yud Shvat, that the big shift that took place in Lubavitch was, of course, when the Freedom Rebbe came to America. And this was the place where he would be here for the next 10 years. And then the leadership would go over to the Rebbe and we'd enter the seventh generation. So already right in the beginning, when he came to America, he already said a mimer talking about the inyan of Kol HaShvim Chavivim, the seventh are the most precious. And what did he say? That even though we say the seventh are the most precious, Nikr Milas Harishan. Nevertheless, when you look at the number 7, you can also recognize the quality of number 1. In other words, when you say number 7 is the most precious, this doesn't dismiss the previous tzaddikim, they're not as important. But number 7 means he can't be number 7 without there being a number 1. So the mere fact that you say that number 7 brings a certain preciousness, by definition means that there's something very significant about number 1. And this person who's number 7 from number 1 has something really exceptional. The definition of 7th is that he's a 7th to the first. So what's the first in this context? If the 7th is Moshe Rabbeinu, the first is Avraham Avinu. So that Maimer, the Friedrich Rebbe, described what is the quality of the first, which is Avraham Avinu. And he says his Aveda was mainly Shois Avedas Mesiras Nefesh. Avraham Avinu's Aveda was with Mesiras Nefesh. He put his life on the line. Like we know that there were 10 tests that Avraham was tested with, and the test of the Ur Kazdin, where he was thrown into a furnace of fire, which means he was into spreading Hashem's name, in spite of the fact that it put his life in danger. And everything else Abraham did was Mesiras Nefesh, no calculations, nothing that was limiting him. Even when Hashem asked him to sacrifice his own son, he was ready. So Abraham Avinu's Aveda is Mesiras Nefesh. Now he goes into the difference. You would think Mesiras Nefesh, what could be higher than Mesiras Nefesh? You're ready to give up your life. So this Maimer explains that even in Mesiras Nefesh, there are two levels. Whenever you learn something in Chassidus, before you turn around, you find out there are two levels, and many more. Mesiras Nefesh, you would think, what could be higher than that? A person is ready to give up his life. So he's saying, even in Mesiras Nefesh, there are two ways that a person can have Mesiras Nefesh. One is higher than the other. So Avraham Avinu's Mesiras Nefesh would be higher than Rabbi Akiva. What's with Rabbi Akiva? So we know the story that Rabbi Akiva lived in the times of the Romans, and they made a decree that you're not allowed to teach Torah in public. And Rabbi Akiva wasn't stopped by that. He continued to teach Torah. And as a result of that, he was arrested. And then later, he was murdered by them. And Rabbi Akiva said, before he died, he said that my whole life, he was waiting to give up his life for Hashem. In other words, when you see the Shema, you say you should love Hashem with all your heart and all your soul. And it means even if you have to give away your soul to Hashem, you're ready to do it. So all his life, he was craving to have the opportunity to do that. But we know that a Jew is not allowed to do any harm to himself. And even tzaddikim, who were davening and they were overcome with love for Hashem to the point that they were so on fire that the neshama left their body, it was considered inappropriate. It's not what Hashem wants. So even though he had the desire to do that, in other words, his love to Hashem was such a fire, was such a deep, intense, unconditional love that nothing satisfied it. He always felt that he wants to give everything away to Hashem, wants to give away his life to Hashem, but you're not allowed to. Here, when Hashem arranged something should happen, which was out of his control, and the Romans were there to take away his life, and of course, they did the most horrific crime that you can possibly do. But in his end, he said that here is his opportunity to do something which he craved for his whole life. What could be higher than that? So the Frierdiker Rebbe explains how Avraham Avinu's Mesiras Nefesh was greater than that. Why? Let's see the words inside. The Mesiras Nefesh, the Mesiras Nefesh of Avraham Avinu was Shaloi Chipes Mesiras Nefesh. He wasn't looking for it. He wasn't craving for it. He wasn't looking forward to give up his life for Hashem. And that in that way, it was different than Rabbi Akiva. Mesiras Nefesh Rabbi Akiva was gesucht Mesiras Nefesh. He was looking for the opportunity. And he said these words, Masai Yover Liyodi Ve'akamenu. When will I ever have the opportunity to give up my life for Hashem? I think I'll first explain it, and then if we have time, we'll do the words inside. When a person says that I want to give up my life for Hashem, and they're craving, when will the time come for me to do that? Basically, what does it mean? It means like this: I want to serve Hashem. And I want to serve Hashem with love and fear. And there are many levels of love. I want to serve Hashem with a higher level and a higher level and a higher level. And finally, a person comes to a place where nothing satisfies them. They want to serve Hashem with the highest level of love. So even though they're ready to give up their life, but again, this is on a very, very fine level. Let's not chas v'shalom confuse this with misinterpreting it. It's on a very high, fine level, but on a very fine level, what's the driving force for his Mesiras Nefesh? To serve Hashem in the most complete, perfect way. So there's a certain something of this would be the most perfect way of me serving Hashem. I'm being fulfilled. My avodah is being perfect the way it's supposed to be. Avraham Avinu Mesiras Nefesh doesn't say that he was looking forward to have it. He wasn't looking forward to give up his life. He just had one goal. And his goal, his mission statement was he has to spread Hashem's name in the world. And spreading Hashem's name in the world meant that no matter what happens, no matter what stands in the way, nothing will stop him. Nothing in the world will stop him, even if his life will be threatened. So it's not that he gave up his life for Hashem, so he should serve Hashem in a more complete way. The giving up his life was just by the way. It was just the way, it was just for him to able to do what he wanted, which is to serve Hashem. So again, the difference between the two Mesiras Nefesh is, in one case, the Mesiras Nefesh is, there's a little bit of me in it. Through this, I will serve Hashem in the most complete way. I will reach the highest level of serving Hashem. By Avraham Avinu, there wasn't even that little bit of I. It was all about doing what Hashem wants, spreading his name, and giving up his life was just sort of the extent of his dedication and his loyalty, that he's so dedicated, so loyal. He'll go out by day, he'll go out by night, he'll give away his money, he'll work very hard, he'll even give up his life. But he didn't give up his life as a way of serving Hashem, completing and perfecting his service to Hashem. Is this understood?
Yeah.
Okay, Rotem, very good, thank you. To a certain extent, this will also explain how is it possible that there were tzaddikim that really, they did that. They had such love for Hashem and their soul expired. It wasn't considered a positive thing. So again, all this is at a very subtle, very, very fine level. We're talking about big tzaddikim and chas v'shalom. There's nothing personal there. Everything is Hashem, but still on a very, very fine level. The tzaddik is overcome with love for Hashem. His soul is on fire. Then he has to tell himself, okay, stop, contain yourself, make sure that your soul remains in the body, don't get carried away. And there's one tzaddik that does that, and another tzaddik can't do it. How come he can't do it? This is what Hashem wants, that the neshama should be in the body. And even though the neshama in the body, in the physical world, is further away and doesn't really feel Hashem, and you don't have that spiritual experience, but still what Hashem wants. So the answer is, when a person's avodas Hashem is totally, completely selfless, then even if Hashem tells him, I want you to stay away from me, stay further down here, then he's ready to do that. Whatever Hashem wants. When a person's avodah is to perfect their personal avodas Hashem, it becomes very difficult for them to let go of that incredible, amazing love that they have for Hashem and stop it and allow the soul to be contained in the body. So this is what it means, that even in the highest levels of tzaddikim, of serving Hashem, in a very, very subtle way, there are two ways. Avraham Avinu's way was totally, completely selfless. It was nothing about his personal spiritual gain. And Rabbi Akiva, there was this driving force that he wanted to have the highest level of serving Hashem, and that's why he had Mesiras Nefesh. So of course, in this Maimer, he's bringing out the Maila, the advantage and the greatness of Avraham Avinu, even over someone as great as Rabbi Akiva. And therefore, Moshe Rabbeinu is the seventh of such a great tzaddik like Avraham Avinu, who had the highest level of Mesiras Nefesh. So when we say that Moshe is amazing because he's the seventh, let's remember that if not for the first, there couldn't be the seventh. That the reason why you have the qualities you have is because you're the seventh of number one. I don't know what it meant, but I remember once driving down in the country area, upstate New York, and there was a huge billboard, and that's exactly what it said on the sign. You can't have number 7 without number 1. I know for sure they didn't learn the Maimer, so I don't know what they're referring to, but that's what it's saying here, that the number 7 is precious, but because it's number 7 means that it had to be number 1. So therefore, let's remember the Maila of the first, but also let's recognize the Maila of number 7. Okay, to be continued. Emir Hashem. I hope we'll be able to do in person tomorrow. Emir Hashem. Everybody, feel good.
Amen. Thank you, Rabbi.
And thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Rachel, for the technology. And thank you, Dvorah, for the